Hello there, and welcome to Star Wars Celebration in Tokyo 2025. I am incredibly excited to be joined by two incredibly talented creative individuals who help bring a galaxy far, far away, very close to home in the Disney parks. He is Asa Kalama. He is the executive creative director at Walt Disney Imagineering.
Yeah. So I wear a couple of different hats,
Okay.
but the one that brings me here today is I oversee the global Lucasfilm portfolio for Walt Disney Imagineering.
Now I'm curious about what your other hats are that you wear, what your business card looks like, and how many different titles you have on it.
There are some commas and some ampersands.
And from the storytelling powerhouse of Pixar is creative director Michael Serna. Michael, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to be here. So I am the executive creative director for live entertainment, overseeing Star Wars portfolio from a live entertainment standpoint. So any kind of experiences that involve humans or shows, those kinds of things. And I work on other projects all around the world for Imagineering.
And I'm going to take a huge leap here and say that you are both incredibly large Star Wars fans as well.
Never seen the movies. I'm excited to see some. Yeah, I'm hoping I'll see some.
I think they're going to be a big thing. They've
been around for a little while. So yeah, I obviously, I'm a little older than most of my team here. I've seen all the films in the theater. I'm happy to have seen everything and been a fan since I was a child and grew up with toys, and just, being able to create new things in our parks is really like a childhood dream come true, to be honest.
So you remember that moment, probably like I do, in 1977, sitting in that theater, and when that Star Destroyer came overhead, everything changed.
Absolutely. Actually, I was in a drive-in theater in the back of a Plymouth looking at it in this giant outdoor screen with like the stars behind it. So I think it had an even crazier sort of feeling for me, seeing it that way. But absolutely, that moment will forever be ingrained in my head.
Yeah. So what is your origin story, your Star Wars origin story?
Well, the first time I saw the films, I was over at my friend's house. He had the VHS box set of the original trilogy. And that was incredible. But my first discovery of Star Wars actually came through toys. So I was at a garage sale, and I came across what later was a Y-wing. But I just remember being sort of totally awestruck by the weird asymmetric design of it all. And so it was really through that toys that I sort of came to understand what Star Wars is all about.
Yeah, and I'm sure when we were all kids, our stories are probably very similar, that we took those toys home, we had the action figures, and we laid down on, at least for me, shag-ish carpeting and created our own Star Wars story. And now, thanks to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, I hosted a panel yesterday about living our own Star Wars story in the Disney parks, and what Batuu and the Black Spire Outpost affords us the opportunity to do is not just watch Star Wars from a passive experience, but to allow us to be in it. And it's a place where everything is canon, right? Because we're creating a new story. Just quickly talk about, from a 30,000 foot view, the importance of affording guests that opportunity, that privilege, not to have a passive experience where we're just watching, but to really create our own story, make our own backstories up, and live our stories in the parks.
Yeah, absolutely. That's everything for us. I remember, when we first started the project, there's literally four of us sitting around in a conference room, excited that we have this incredible opportunity, also a little bit intimidated by the responsibility, but that's literally where we started from. It wasn't, where do we want to go? It wasn't, these are the rides that we want to build. It was rather, this is a space that we want to create that's about getting to inhabit some of these iconic archetypes. And so we really built the entire land around this idea of the smugglers, the bounty hunters, the light side and the dark side. We use that organizing principle of giving space for people to come in, to not relive the stories, to your point, that we've seen on screen, but to give people the opportunity and the tools to invent their own stories.
Yeah, which is almost, to a certain degree, I remember when it first opened, it was this kind of double-edged sword, because there was, to certain people who grew up on the original trilogy, there was this newness to it, almost a lack of familiarity. But what that does is it opens up the door to not be locked into, well, I don't understand the story because this was my Star Wars. This is where I grew up. My kids grew up with Clone Wars. I grew up with the original trilogy, and there are now, on the floor below us, generations of fans who have their own sort of place. But Batuu affords us the opportunity to not have to worry about who we're going to see or what we're going to do, but to sort of make our story on our own.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the excitement we have working in a theme park environment and expanding the stories and continuing to grow Galaxy's Edge, because it is like all of our parks and all of our experiences. The idea is we start someplace and then we evolve, right? And the stories change, the stories become richer, they change and become different types of stories. We change things out all the time. That's what Imagineering is here for. And so in the past couple of years, we've found this great opportunity to continue to expand into relevant stories we didn't know existed when we started working on the land, and really open up the frame of what Batuu can be from a lot of different experiences, right? From our attractions, also to our character experiences, and now in our sort of spectaculars we have in the land now. It's just a very exciting time, I think, for Galaxy's Edge.
And I think another thing too that was important when we thought about the place itself, right, is that we tried to create this, again, sort of like outpost on the edge of wild space, because we knew it could be a destination, it could be a home for travelers that are, traversing the galaxy, and so it created this flexibility for there to be new visitors, all the time.
Not only new visitors, but new inhabitants. And what I love about Galaxy's Edge is there are so many layers of the onion that allow you to go as narrow or shallow, as deep as you like. But some of the new travelers, some of the new inhabitants that have started to occupy Galaxy's Edge are the oh so very lovable BDX droids, which has added one of those additional layers to it. And I know during South by, when you were demonstrating on stage, these incredibly lifelike, you almost feel like they each have a different personality. You talked about some of these subtle imperfections that make the droids come to life. Can you talk about sort of balancing that tactical and technical precision with some of the emotional expression that we can see in these droids, which is remarkable, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the thing we have the world's greatest engineering teams between Disney Research and Advanced Development. They have been able to take what is, lines of code and servos and actuators and turn them into things that really feel expressive. And I think the key differentiator between the work that we do at Imagineering versus, a maybe robotics manufacturer that's building them for something that's more utilitarian or functional, is that we have to figure out not only how do you create a droid that can self-balance, that can walk, but how do you then layer on top of that all of the sort of personality, all of those little subtle idiosyncrasies that make a thing start to feel alive. And so what we did, which again, I don't think anybody else has ever done before, is the way that these droids actually work is we create a what we call a training policy using reinforcement learning, meaning we create 1 million different droids. We have them all practice learning how to walk, and through trial and error, they very ever so slowly learn how to keep themselves upright. But then we layer on top of that a character performance. So we have a brilliant character animator start to create, what does it mean for this droid what does its gait look like? How does it shift its weight? How does it celebrate? How does it look sad? How does it look happy? And then that gets layered on top of that sort of base performance. It's about making it be able to stand up. And it's those two things combined that, again, create this incredible performance.
Yeah, then the last piece we add in, I mean, it's great to have this really cool robot, but giving it a backstory, making it make sense in the land, or wherever we put it, was really important to us. And working closely with Lucasfilm to explore how they've been used before in games and other stories, and then how do we then bring them to life and make it a real engaging experience that feels like it belongs in Batuu, doesn't feel like we just threw something out there. We really dug deep into what was the basis of the characters of the droids as being companion droids. Mm-hmm. So the idea that they would be there and curious about people was very fun for us. It made them very lifelike and made them have such great personalities. We gave them individual profiles, so they each have a certain way. One's a little more aggressive, one's a little more dumb. It's those kinds of things are very fun and allows us to kind of have a good time and hopefully, connect to the little ones as well. Because one thing about a mechanical thing, it can be very scary, but I think that having so much personality and such a unique dynamic to it, it's hard not to love them.
The first time I saw them in person, the first thing I thought of was WALL-E. Because the first time I watched WALL-E, I said, how are they making this non-human character emote in such subtle ways? The droids seem to do that as well, because there's this incredible balance of technology and AI as well as puppetry. But I think there's also the X factor, right? So how do you deal with kind of the unpredictability of, the guests that are going to be in the space as well?
I mean, one of the tricks for me is a typical thing across any kind of performance. Look somebody in the eye, and it changes the dynamics immediately, right? As soon as you can have those droids look at, notice you, turn the light on, their lights in their eyes come on, automatically brings them into sort of a connected piece, sort of like a dog looks at you and you feel connected. I think that's a key part of this experience, and it makes it feel less robotic and less artificial. Do you want to speak about the rest of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also a lot of really smart, subtle design elements, like the antenna, as a for instance, right? To your point about sort of the analog of a dog, right? There's so much expressiveness comes from the ears of an animal like a dog or a cat. And I think that's just another really fun way for them to help convey or communicate how they're feeling. And I think it's that idea that you can see this like emotional range in the droid that makes it feel so much more believable. Because if it was, just one flat note, right? I think that's what makes it feel more robotic and more stilted. But they have, and also the vocalizations as well. Like all of those things add up to something that feels much more lyrical.
When I've watched them in the parks, I find, probably as you do too, I'm almost watching the droids less than I'm watching the guests, because I want to see, you talk about feelings. It's about how I don't want to say how they make us feel. Talk to me a little bit about what you've seen in terms of the guest response from the youngest to the oldest.
Yeah, it's very exciting to actually have the droids here in Tokyo, because I spent some time with them yesterday, and just seeing a whole different audience look at it. It is very universal, right? Even though, of course, same in California, everybody wants to capture video and have this moment, but it is exciting to see how universal, from the oldest to the youngest, there's just this immediate connection to them. And we often early on called them the duck droids, because they had this sort of duck quality. And I think it's the same thing happens in the park. If you've ever seen the ducks appear by the castle, all of a sudden the whole place stops and everybody starts paying attention to these ducks. I think that's that same quality, is that there's something very connected, and you want to kind of nurture it a little bit. So you want to get close, and they're not overly aggressive with the droids, which is nice. Like, guests don't run up to them, kids don't run up to them. There's this sort of distance that's sort of like you just want to appreciate it and kind of enjoy being in the space with it.
I almost felt like it's like a child walking up to another child.
100%. Yeah, we definitely had, the profiles are very childlike, right? And we did sort of embrace this idea that the droids are recommissioned, so they're actually relearning everything again in the park. And that's why we have a handler with them, because they have to learn their new ways of being companion droid. But that's that nice way, allows us to be curious, to be impetuous, to make mistakes, all those fun things that humans do that I think identifies these droids.
And I assume, like humans, again, because there is sort of a technical AI and again, the human aspect of it, they are learning, right? They're learning and evolving. So I assume that the BDX droid we see on day one is going to evolve over time.
Yeah, so, we're probably on our fourth version of the BDX droid right now. And with each generation, right, we take the learnings from the guest interactions, both from a performance perspective, but also from a technology perspective as well. We're constantly hardening their mechanical design to make them more robust. We're constantly upgrading the servos that drive their animation to make them more fluid. And to your point about sort of capability, one of the things that we're continuing to push on is just how expressive they can be. And we are very rapidly sort of approaching the point where the operator of the droid they're doing an incredible job bringing these things to life and animating them, but we have even more functions and capabilities and controls that we want to provide to them. And so we're looking now to see if there are opportunities for the droids to be a little bit smarter, so that maybe rather than having to puppeteer every single moment of an interaction, instead it's more about, hey, there's a little kid over there, go over there and have a cute moment, and really allowing more capability, more expressiveness, and even a more lifelike interaction.
And the puppeteers are invisible. Like, they're wonderfully invisible, because nobody is paying attention to the man behind the curtain, as it were, because, like you said, each of these droids has their own personality, and there's this magnetic quality to each of them that everything else becomes invisible. And I love seeing that there's this collective experience that we as guests have with them, and there's also that individual, like, whether you go to meet a princess, you get that sort of one-on-one time with the BDX droids as well.
And I think the other thing that's, again, so incredible about the droids, right, is because they are so expressive and you're immediately drawn to them. The puppeteer honestly doesn't have to be that invisible. Sometimes they can be standing right next to you, and you could even know it's them. Yeah. But again, you're so enraptured by the sort of adorability of them, they become completely invisible.
Yeah. So let's talk about Batuu as a whole. We're talking about the guest interaction and the guest response. Obviously, you've been watching it very closely with the BDX droids, but for Batuu as a whole, and we'll talk about some of the continuing evolution that we're learning about here at Star Wars Celebration. How has the guest response shaped or helped evolve what we see on Batuu and maybe even its role in the larger Star Wars universe?
Yeah, I think the guests are a huge part of the experience in Batuu for us, right? Obviously, we want to make sure everybody's living out their Star Wars dreams, but we pay a lot of attention to what people say about it, what they're looking for, what they're hoping for. And really over the past few years, a lot of the evolution has been really driven by fan interest and obviously affinity to different stories, right? It feels foolish to ignore how much people love the Mandalorian and Grogu and being able to meet that character and then allow us to bring in other characters that people love from the series and from Ahsoka. And that whole evolution was really done with care and thinking ahead as how is this going to affect us long term? How do we tell these stories holistically and not catch ourselves in a problem, right? So a lot of care goes into, you will never encounter, for example, Luke Skywalker, who just joined us. You won't encounter him in Kylo Ren, right? He won't encounter Rey because those stories are not intersecting at this point. So we're very much taking care to stick to regions that we're setting boundaries for so that we're being true to the way we've laid out Batuu from the beginning, but still have that flexibility to offer really amazing stories and characters that you really want to see instead of trying to, ignore them and act like they're not part of our world. It's kind of exciting for me to keep finding those creative ways to tell those stories in the land, and then find ways to tie in some of those original trilogy fans like you and myself with experiences like Shadows of Memory, Skywalker Saga, things like that allow us to now dip our toe into some of these other mythological stories that affect Batuu.
Right, because you have to balance, canon and storytelling in Batuu with guests, what guests are looking for when they come in and say, I want to see a character from the most recent Disney Plus show, whether it's a Mandalorian Grogu, or wanting to see characters that we grew up with, right? We want to see a Luke Skywalker. How do you sort of strike that balance and allow yourself, because originally it wasn't like that. Batuu sort of existed in a certain place and time, and I very much, it shows that you do listen. You were willing to sort of stretch what those original parameters were to allow these characters that are so beloved and part of our childhood and or adulthood to come into the parks.
Yeah, I think I'll start and you can kind of continue on. When the land was created, it really was created to evolve, right? It was starting as a starting place for the stories and a world where all these stories could continue to evolve and take place. And as Asa mentioned, we're at the outer rim here and people can travel from all over the galaxy here. But I think that the idea that, we take close attention with Lucasfilm to really work through what's the right story to tell. I think that is what I think the fans can really hold true to their hearts, that we're going to continue to evolve the land, but we're going to continue to look at what makes the most sense from our story standpoint.
Yeah, and as we do that, again, we sweat every last possible detail, right? So, you
have to, because it's right.
and so
They'll let you know if you don't, right?
And we are all diehard fans, and I think in many ways maybe the most draconian in terms of making sure that we nail everything just right. So we have lots of conversations around, this character is going to be in this portion of the land. Does that prop that's on the shelf in the back of that shop still make story sense, given the fact of where we might be on that particular point in the timeline? So that's part of the really wonderful conversations we have with our partners at Lucasfilm, is making sure that we're reconciling all of these things, right? We're not carelessly introducing, a character in a place where they don't belong in a way that might otherwise sort of contradict the story, but really doing the homework and doing the work to make sure that everything supports the sort of unified story.
But it also opens up the opportunity, as opposed to an attraction where you are very much directing the action, what we as guests see and experience. Things like the BDX droids and the characters, and even the cast members who have their own backstories and where they're coming from, which I think is incredibly empowering for them. It also affords the opportunity for unscripted storytelling, which I think is probably, it opens up the floodgates for a lot of opportunity, but you also, again, like you said, want to make sure you have some semblance of control of what that storytelling looks like.
And I think those are always, at least for me, my favorite moments, right? Because I think, at the end of a Disney vacation, the stories that you often recount to your friends, they're probably not the plot of the attraction, right? They're more of these like authentic, unscripted, to your point, like unexpected moments or happenings. And to your point about the cast members, without them, right, it is a beautiful environment, but it is not alive, right? So it is truly through their incredible performance, their sort of dedication to creating backstories, to understanding how they fit into this broader universe. All of that is what allows for those moments of the casual game of sabacc that just so happens to unfold in front of Oga's cantina, that turns into that amazing story that you're still telling your friends, 2 years down the road.
Right, and please understand what I mean by this, because I think the star of Galaxy's Edge is Galaxy's Edge. Right? I think the environment is the star, and as someone who is very fortunate and grateful to be local, I find that when I go into that section of the park, it's less about going to ride the attraction than it is just to have one of those unscripted moments. You never know who I might run into, not just for a photo op, but for that interaction that I have. And I think too, like here at Celebration, there is this sense of community that comes together because we know everybody who sort of is in that place is of the same sort of like-minded fandom of Star Wars.
Yeah, one of the things I've loved about Batuu since I've joined the Star Wars portfolio is how much the fans have made it their own. Right, the things that they like to do, the gatherings they have, the sort of the meetups on Friday nights, and of course the holidays we create. That has really been
May
organic.
the 4th is like a national holiday.
It's for us. I mean, I'm take the day off, of course. I think that's the exciting part about it, right? Is that they've sort of informed us often what they enjoy, like what are the things we want to do, and that has affected some things we've created because of the different kinds of things they were doing. I tell a story about how fireworks have been going off near Batuu for years now, and people have been gathering there just to listen in silence while fireworks go off. And that really drove us to say, well, we're missing a story opportunity here. What can we do to enhance this experience and make you want to come back here for this, not just happen to be back here or hang out here? How can we make that a richer experience? And that's exciting to me, to be able to have those sort of moments where we see things happening organically, and how do we continue to help that, or just stay out of the way and let it happen, because our cast members are doing things that are great, that we say, that's fun, keep doing it.
Yeah, and I think, we always, from time to time, will get these amazing, stories sent to us via email from our operations partners, amazing stories of either, the lightsaber meetup, the marriage proposal that happens inside the Millennium Falcon. One that was recently sent my way that I thought was just so lovely is, as part of Millennium Falcon Smugglers Run, at the end, you were given sort of a ranking, and the highest ranking possible is Employee of the Month. And it's incredibly difficult to achieve. In fact, I don't know that we actually thought that anybody ever would, and the joke was always that Hondo Ohnaka is always Employee of the Month, naturally. But we got a note of this father-daughter duo that had done it. They had managed to achieve that, and the way that they were celebrated by the cast was incredible. They had a little ceremony for them for the Falcon. They created a logbook for them to sign, and I just love, again, not only the dedication, again, of the fans to the story, but again, the way that the cast also celebrate the way that the fans engage as well.
And it has to inspire you to, we need to do more of this, right? Clearly, we as guests don't just love the gamification of the experience, not just in the attractions, but I think in the land itself.
Yeah.
But now we want that next level, that next threshold to reach. Chewy mode was hard enough for people to get, but now that people know that this thing is going to exist, that is going to set the bar high. And I think, I'm sure as Imagineers, the question or the statement that you are probably tired of hearing is, I wonder what Walt would think of this. But as I was thinking about this evolution of Galaxy's Edge, I think it very much is in alignment with what Walt was doing. The day that Disneyland was completed, he was already finding ways to improve it. And I have the feeling that same evolution has been going on behind the scenes since the day that Galaxy's Edge opened. Let's talk about Smugglers Run, specifically the new announcement. Not just having the Mandalorian and Grogu, but now we're going to visit a new destination in Coruscant. What makes these characters, this new mission, technically and sort of narratively different than what was in the original attraction?
Yeah, so first of all, we're super excited to be able to work with Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau on this. Again, as Star Wars fans, right, we've watched the show, we love the show, and we're like, if there's got to be some way to bring this to life inside of Galaxy's Edge. And so it was a no-brainer for us when they announced that a film was coming out, that this seemed like an awesome opportunity for us to bring it into the park. But really for us, what we wanted to do with this update in the mission was double down on the idea of creating more variability every time you ride. So that it's not just about going to a singular destination, but in fact, there are 3 different destinations that you may end up at. But even inside of each of those, creating alternative paths for people to navigate through, creating big moments of environmental sort of set piece destruction and action, so that it's not just about how many credits you come back with, but it truly feels like every time you ride, the story that I tell is different than the story that Michael tells, because we truly went on a completely different adventure.
Right, the rewritability factor of this attraction has just grown exponentially. Plus, again, there's you sort of mentioned the trying to get a higher score. There's another layer that has also been added for the engineer, now being able to not just, again, have that passive experience, but interact with one of the characters on screen. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we are, always enamored of everything little baby Grogu does. And so as soon as we started to develop this mission, we started to talk about, well, what are other ways that we can sort of maximize the amount of time that our crew members can engage with them. And so we love this idea that throughout your adventure, there may be times when the Mandalorian has to depart the Razor Crest, and knowing how Grogu can sometimes, when unaided, get into some mischief. We love the idea that maybe he starts playing with the control panel on the Razor Crest and actually calls in. So throughout the adventure, there are going to be these moments and opportunities for our engineers to have these little mini transmission moments with Grogu.
I see you're a fan because I see the way you smile as you talk about that, because I think that's not just something you're excited to see fans do, but as somebody who helped create it and experience it, when you had that experience yourself, again, it just adds another dimension and a reason to revisit the attraction over and over again, much like Star Tours.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we are very much about trying to figure out what are the ways in which we can deliver an experience that, not only we would love, the fans would love, our families would love. We're constantly always trying to evaluate everything we do through the lens of a bunch of different audiences. And again, I think what makes Mando and Grogu such a great fit is there's just like such broad, unbelievable, universal appeal. It works for the younger audiences that we were talking about earlier, that the BDX speaks to, is just as adorable and delightful for adults. And so much of the themes of that show and the film are about sort of the familial bond between a father and a son. And again, that's a sort of universal theme that many of the parents who come to the park also bring with them as well.
There is also the not to get overly nerdy, there's a bit of the technical aspect behind the scenes, right? And the use of the Unreal Engine, which is used on Mandalorian and Grogu for this real-time rendering. Talk about it from a technical perspective. How does the experience change or upgrade for the guests as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So for this latest mission,
the fans in the background are going wild.
I know, they're excited already.
Unreal Engine gets everybody excited.
So for this latest mission, we're upgrading to the latest version of Unreal. And so with that is going to come a huge lift in fidelity. So it's going to look even more fantastic. And we're partnering with ILM, and I mean, which talk about pinch me opportunity, right? Every meeting we have with them is here's more of the most amazing, beautiful artwork that you've ever seen in your entire life, right? And so it's going to look utterly fantastic. But to your point about it being the same tool that they use on the show, what that allows us to do is start to share a library of assets. So ships, environments, characters, things that ILM is creating for either film or TV, those are now elements that we can bring directly into our experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, the word, synergy between what we see on screen and what we experience in the parks, I mean, that line is starting to get more and more blurred as one is almost informing the other to a certain degree.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that's one of the unique things that is afforded to us with this relationship inside of the Walt Disney Company with Lucasfilm, right? The fact that BDX, for instance, started off as a character that you got to meet in the park, that then turned into a character that we get to see on the big screen, that we now get to celebrate back in the park. That's such a unique storytelling opportunity.
And you're doing it in 2 and 3 dimensions, right? You're able to do it from a technological perspective in upgrading what we see on a screen, but also bringing in the BDX droids, and then you're also being able to bring in characters as well. And again, it goes back to this deciding who and what to bring in, because you also have this delicate balance of, you know, bringing things in for the casual fans and those who attend, the deep lore fans that are looking for the most obscure characters from this, seventh book in a series. How do you sort of go and try and strike that balance and almost always leave us wanting more?
Well, I think it is important to listen and pay attention to what could be relevant in the future, but also we like to do a lot of celebrating. So right now in California, we're doing these Disney After Dark events. I'm sure you're familiar with those. That's where you get to see those really crazy characters you've never seen before. But even the Season of the Force is a chance for us to celebrate the fans leading up to May the 4th. You're going to see those in a lot of places. In Paris, we're doing a similar event coming up that's celebrating the fans. And I think that's how we continue to find ways to continue those fan admirations long term. Meanwhile, in our immersive lands, still dig deep into story for those diehard fans who really want to get deep into it, and those casual fans just want to have a good time and ride an amazing attraction. That has to be that perfect balance for everybody. It's a wonderful challenge, but I think we keep ourselves grounded by really engaging each other as creatives, engaging Lucasfilm, and then paying attention to what the parks are feeling their needs are and what they want their guests and the guests are telling them.
Yeah, because there is an accessibility to it. You don't have to come in where there's no sort of guest resistance. Like, well, I'm not a big Star Wars fan. I don't know the lore. I'm not going to be able to follow along the attraction. Anybody can experience it, no matter what your level of fandom is, even if this is your first time stepping into the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I think that's very exciting. If this is your first time to walk into a Star Wars experience, Galaxy's Edge is an amazingly themed location that takes you to another world completely. So if you don't know what that is, it's like walking to Fantasyland. It's this amazing kind of beautiful place, and you can really dig into these stories. And I do think the franchise appeals to such a broad audience because it has many unique characters that everybody can see themselves in, right? If you like, my wife was not the biggest fan until Mandalorian, and I said, I think you're going to like this one.
She's not alone.
I think you're going to love this Yoda character. And she was blown away. And suddenly she's like, I like Star Wars now. Right? Like, that's just how it is. That's her entryway. I think everybody has that thing that they find that is there, whether it's a toy that was bought at a yard sale or whether seeing it on a drive-in theater. Whatever way you get into Star Wars, it's kind of an amazing journey for yourself.
Well, even like the Disney parks, I think it's the same thing. Everybody has their own entry point, and some of them come in because they love the dining, they love the golf, and then all of a sudden they become Disney fans because they found that way to sort of take steps in. But if storytelling was the Force, how do you balance the light side, which is this tradition, the nostalgia, the fan service, with, I don't want to call it the dark side, but the dark side of innovation and risk and surprise when creating these experiences? Because it has to be difficult for you, or at least a challenge, trying to sort of serve such a wide spectrum of fandom.
Do you want to take that one? I got it. I wouldn't say it's the dark side at all. I think it's
I just had to just to use the metaphor.
The metaphor works, but I think it's an exciting opportunity. I think where we are headed forward as a company, the amount of technology access and sort of growth we are having right now is just going to continue to find unique ways to reach our audiences and find a way to create that balance of amazing storytelling and just things that blow your mind. And, I think on the regular in our offices alone, we get to see some things in process that are just mind-blowing. We have such amazingly smart, creative people thinking on projects, and then we sometimes need a story to go with it to find that home. BDX is a prime example of that, right? We were working on biped, animatronic robots, and then that sort of afforded that opportunity of what if this is the way to get them out to our guests. So we keep our eyes open. We are always talking and figuring out ways to look at what's coming up and how can we make more exciting experiences. To me, the dream is for you to continue to walk into Batuu or any of our experiences and just lose yourself completely in that story and don't think about the technology at all, right? It's all happening around you. It's happening in huge dynamic ways, but you're just feeling transformed into another world.
And I think for us, again, wouldn't characterize it as risky or something that feels scary, but rather something that feels super exciting. Because I think we always have bigger dreams and ambitions than technology of the day actually affords and allows. And so, if anything, it's the opposite. It's, oh, thank goodness we finally figured out a way to accomplish that thing that we've been dreaming of. Right? We've got drawers full of ideas that defied the laws of physics at one point, right, or computation, that we now finally have the opportunity. So for us, it's like we're champing at the bit for the opportunity to push the new, to create something that people haven't seen before, because it is we're very much in the business of, not to use an overused term, right, but create the illusion of magic, right? Mm-hmm. This idea that I saw something that is absolutely impossible, that I couldn't possibly or have never interacted with in my ordinary everyday life. And so often it's these huge technical advancements that, again, to Michael's point, hopefully our guests never see, that are the unlock that allow those things to happen.
Again, it's the Walt thing, right? His ideas sometimes technology couldn't catch up. But I think, again, sort of from an overarching view, what you're really doing with Galaxy's Edge is it's nostalgia in the making, right? For these, not just kids at heart, but young kids. My kids have grown up in not just the Disney parks, but my son grew up in Galaxy's Edge. One of the most remarkable experiences we ever had was building a lightsaber together in Savi's workshop. I may or may not have been a weeping mess, but it's about, right, but that's what it is. It's about how this place makes us feel. How do you want people to feel? How do you want kids to feel? How do you want parents to feel, or kids at heart to feel, when they enter and then leave and then take away these memories of Galaxy's Edge?
I think for me, creative, powerful, and capable. I mean, I think the goal with the land was to give people a place where they felt safe to, imagine the same way that they would a cardboard box as a spaceship, that they are completely transported to a galaxy far, far away. We just have higher production value than maybe what you can build in your backyard. And so everything that we've done, and hopefully we will continue to do, is about trying to create that sense of permission and that sense of safety and the tools necessary to live out that fantasy.
All of that, yes. Also, I would say awe-inspired, I guess, because I want you to play. I want you to have a good time in that in Batuu. But one of my favorite things to do when I'm just roaming around and watching is seeing like a kid with their parent point and go, oh, "There's that," and they just run towards it. Right? There's a droid. There's a this. There's a that, and that abandon of just seeing something that draws your attention. Sometimes they don't even know what it is, right? They know it's a droid or it's a robot or something, or it's a guy or it's a spaceship. But that excitement is really something you can't get many places. And that ability to see that and see that their faces just light up. And then that shared moment with the family that gets to enjoy that together, right? A father who knows what the Millennium Falcon is, or a mother that knows what the Millennium Falcon is, and a child seeing it lifelike for the first time. I'm jealous of that sometimes.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, you can't sort of predict those moments. Like, and as you've watched those, is there anything that you ever saw that just surprised you or moved you and like, this is it. This is the reason why we do what we do, or just surprised you, like we never expected that to be this thing that had happened in this very sort of predictable but yet unpredictable environment with guests.
Yeah, I think more recently, there's tons of them, but I was very surprised when we launched when Luke joined Batuu. I knew there'd be excitement, but I think what I found most surprising was people just wanted to walk and talk with him. And it was just these people, adults, little kids, just talking about the Force and the Jedi Order with Luke, just walking around Batuu. And he had these strolls, like just little, like casual mentor strolls with these children and adults. And I was very moved by seeing people just kind of, oh, okay, just like having a conversation with a character that way. And we know Luke is incredibly important to a lot of us, but it was just very exciting to see that organic connection. It wasn't about wanting something from him, except just time, just to spend some time with him.
Because there's that suspension of disbelief, and you are talking to Luke Skywalker.
Well, that is Luke Skywalker. What are you talking about?
Obviously, right?
Yeah, it is that moment, that shared moment of feeling like you're in a safe space and you can just spend as much time as you want to, and not have to rush off to do something or get something like an autograph out of a person. It's just spending time. That's a very different thing, I think, that this IP that the Star Wars brings to the fans. It's so personal. And it's so part of your core in a way that you just want to live in it, like every day in some cases.
Yeah, and I think, and just to sort of wrap up, Lee, I could ask you, we can get super nerdy and I can ask you tons of questions, but I'll be respectful of your time. What do you want people to take away, right? What do you want people to take away? What do you want them to see? Make sure they either don't miss or take away. What do you want their experience to be when they leave and then when they hopefully bring others back for the first time?
Well, for me right now, I think what is super exciting is I want the casual and the diehards to check out our Shadows of Memory, the Skywalker Saga experience. I think it's something very unique we've never done before in any land, especially an immersive land where you really do some deep storytelling through projections that just kind of changes how we do it. It's a very unique experience. It was made with love and a truly heartfelt experience to be created. It has amazing music and some astounding visuals. And I think as a cap of an evening to leave Galaxy's Edge with that as your last beat, I think it's pretty exciting. And I hope it will take you home to have these visions of it in your head, your own little shadow memory plays going on in your head for years and days afterwards.
And the one piece of advice that I always give to folks visiting Galaxy's Edge for the first time is, yes, enjoy the amazing attractions, have the incredibly unique food, see the amazing merchandise, but really take the time to engage with the cast. They truly are the thing that make Batuu and Black Spire Outpost a real living town on the edge of wild space. And the amount of time, love, and energy that they've all put into and committed to thinking about who they are in this galaxy. What community are they a part of? What is their backstory? And the way to access that is just to reach out, to talk to somebody, to stop and ask that cast member who is standing by the entrance to Oga a little bit about who they are. And it's going to open up this entirely hidden world of depth and storytelling that I think will be truly memorable.
Well, on behalf of me and my family and all the families of people down here, thank you for helping to create a place that little 9-year-old Lou Mongello sitting on, the floor with his, box of toys from Toys R Us, who was creating my own stories then, been able to share that with my son and my family, and hopefully they're able to share it with their kids as well, and for giving us a place to live our own Star Wars story. I'm excited, not just to go now, but for what the future holds. So thank you both very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.